Tell you about our special guest, our guest speaker, Peter Rothenberg. He's a volunteer leader with Organizing for Action. It's a nonpartisan grassroots group dedicated for supporting President Obama's legislative agenda for comprehensive immigration reform, gun violence prevention, and climate change. He is a longtime political activist dating back to growing up in Boston and supporting JFK, to volunteering for Obama campaigns in 2007 and 8 and 2012. He was a delegate to the Democratic State Convention in 2007 and 8, a former board member of the Democratic Party of San Fernando Valley, and is founding member of the Valley Grassroots for Democracy Dem Club. Professionally, he worked in aerospace industry and Hollywood film and TV industry. He continues to do consulting for NBC, analyzing their pilot shows for the next TV season. May I introduce to you Peter J. Rothenberg and give him a big hand. Peter.
So I wrote that intro. I can't even live up to that. Is this the correct language? First, the film was great, wasn't it? Yeah. It's called The Dream Is Now. You can look it up on YouTube. You can play it for other family members and friends that come over your house. Play it for them. It's the most powerful argument for why we have to fix this. Now, the U.S. law says immigration is supposed to do everything possible to make sure the families aren't separated. But that doesn't happen. So many times, whether it's the DREAM Act or not, families are separated. So, let me go back to the beginning here. What is Organizing for Action? Everybody knows that guy who lives in Washington, the guy from Kenya who's now the president. Oh, yeah. Okay. Barack Obama started something called the Obama Campaign. The initials were Obama for America, OFA. That has, over the years, changed. It is now called Organizing for Action. It is a nonpartisan, issue-oriented group, not towards elections, but oriented towards gun violence prevention legislation, comprehensive immigration reform legislation, and climate change legislation, things you guys are already working on. Now, after the November election, it seemed like finally there was some momentum for the Senate and the Republicans in the House even to do something about immigration. One of the advantages OFA has as an organization is because we're tied in with the event. We know as much as possible when events are going to happen, when votes are coming up in the Senate. Guess when the vote is in the Senate for immigration reform? Anybody know? It is coming up on Tuesday. That means we have the chance, not just to call senators, we have 2 good U.S. senators here that are pretty safe in California, but we can work on Buck McKeon. Who here lives in Congressional District 25, Santa Clarita Valley, Antelope Valley, Border Ranch, Simi Valley? So quite a few folks. Wherever you live, even outside of Buck McKeon's district, we're doing phone calls to supporters, our supporters in his district, to call his office. That's the only thing that members of Congress understand is political pressure. We can have 50,000 screenings like this, and if all of you go home saying, we need to do something, and you don't contact your member of Congress, that's not going to happen. The vote in the Senate probably will pass on Tuesday. They made a lot of advancement with the Gang of 8, Chuck Schumer on the Democratic side, John McCain on the Republican side. The big issue they were resolving was border security. And they seem to have come to some consensus about how to increase border security, and with that, enough Republicans may sign on to get this thing passed. Let me go back to the beginning, even before that. Who was the first illegal alien, if you will, to come to the United States? Come on, Come on, kids.
Christopher Columbus.
There you go, Christopher Columbus. 1492, we all know the little poem. One of the things that happened in the 100 years after that is when the Spanish set up St. Augustine as a colony in Florida, they introduced the next worst thing to happen. Columbus started out by immediately starting to kill the native inhabitants on islands and places he went. The Spanish carried that out in a much more grand way. The other thing the Spanish did in St. Augustine is they introduced slavery to the United States. It wasn't called the United States then, of course, but slavery to this continent. That's where it started. And no matter where we go in this discussion about immigration, at the deep core of this country is two incredible wrongs. One is the slaughter of the Native Americans, and the second is slavery, which we're still feeling the effects of. So the president, at a briefing in January, I think Minerva played part of the video for it, sort of laid out the problem. Let me read you just a short clip from this. This is the president, January 29th of this year. We define ourselves as a nation of immigrants. That's who we are, in our bones. The promise we see in those who come here from every corner of the globe, that's always been one of our greatest strengths. It keeps our workforce young, it keeps our country on the cutting edge, and it helps build the greatest economic engine the world has ever known. So how many people here had relatives that came from another country, somewhere back? My relatives came over a little bit more than a century ago. But the beginning of the story goes back to July 4th, 1776, hence the flag high. So, July 4th, we're coming up in 2 weeks from tonight. We all know what happened in 1776, Declaration of Independence. One of the grounds of the Declaration, one of the complaints to King George, was about immigration being restricted into the colonies. Let's see what this piece. They said, restrictions on immigration into the colonies and other taxes put on immigrants is keeping us from being economically viable. That was one of the things in the Declaration of Independence. So it starts off immediately that this country was formed based on immigration. 100 years plus, the Statue of Liberty was inaugurated, dedicated in 1886. This microphone is really noisy. Sorry about that. 25 years after that, an event important to me happened. My grandparents, at the Statue of Liberty, became citizens of the United States. That was July 4th, 1911, so more than a century ago. They had come from Romania. They were part of the Eastern European immigration. But many, many groups have come over. We've talked about...
Does this work any better?
A lot better.
Cool. Thank you. So different groups have come over in different waves. Every wave was met with open arms. Yeah? Come on. No. Hell no. Get out of here, you kikes. Get out of here, you Italians. Get out of here, you Poles. Get out of here, wherever you are. Oh, Japs, we're going to imprison them during World War II. You're foreigners. You're not as good as us. The story of immigrants is the story of us. Immigrants in just the last few years have done more for this country in some respects than many of us. 25% of the highest growth companies from 1990 to 2005 were founded by immigrants. Little companies, Intel, Google, Yahoo, eBay. Think about Steve Jobs from Apple, from Lebanese descent. Without immigrants, not only would none of us be here, but the country would not have prospered. These waves of immigrants are like an alchemy that stirs the pot and lets us grow as a country. Let's go back again in history. Declaration of Independence. We know the first part. Everybody knows this part. We hold these truths to be self-evident, blah, blah, blah. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm not trying to make fun of it. But there's another part of it. Talking about what the king has done in terms of preventing the population from growing. That gets repeated on the Statue of Liberty. The Emma Lazarus statement inscription on the Statue of Liberty says, my family came in through Ellis Island, they saw this. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these masses tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. That's the promise of America. Come here. Do good for this country. Work hard. Get an education. Succeed and become part of the American dream. In fact, make the American dream. You, by your life, will be woven into the American character. Now, some people say, well, these people aren't Americans. They come from Mexico. Now, one of the great joys of my life is to laugh at the people who call the people from Brazil and Venezuela, oh, those Mexicans, because they speak a foreign language. Oh, those Mexicans. We have to recognize, especially here in California, California was part of Mexico. They didn't cross the border crossed them. So this country has a history of the Spanish-American people living on both sides of the border, crossing up and back, and it really hasn't changed. Now, one of the things that's in the President's proposal are ideas to make this work for everyone, so that people who are here undocumented can join in the system and take part in the American dream.